What's going on, everyone? Welcome to the Monday, December 1st edition of the Ship My Money Show. I'm your host, Adam Scherer. You can follow me on Twitter at ShipMyMoney DFS. 6-game NBA main slate today on DraftKings. I assume it's like 9 games or something on FanDuel, but DraftKings only has the games through 7:30. So if you don't like late swap and don't want to deal with it, this is a great place for you. I have mixed thoughts on it, but I've had success so far, so I can't complain too much. Going to talk about the 6 games that are on DraftKings. We have a little bit of injury news as far as Q tags go that we're waiting on, but we have gotten a good amount of news already throughout the day. So going to go game by game using the Run the Sims projections that you see on the screen. These are still available for free with the link in the description below. We are still testing these out, making sure that we have everything exactly how we want it before we stop making them free. So for now, they are available on the site. If you want to use them, if you want to check them out, mix them into your process, whatever, link is in the description below. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit the thumbs up button, all of that stuff. I do plan on doing these shows more consistently. Did one last week, but then got tied up with football every day and Thanksgiving and all of that, but should be able to get into a more consistent routine now. So appreciate you guys checking it out. Look for more of these in the future. Going to go game by game, starting with the Hawks taking on the Pistons tonight in Detroit. Pistons are about 8 or 9 point favorites. The Hawks did play a double overtime game last night as well. So do keep that in mind. You have the back-to-back, you have the double overtime game. Difficult to quantify that type of stuff, but generally not as appealing as it would be for Hawks players or for this game in general, as you know, it probably would have been had the Hawks not played a double overtime game yesterday. Not sure why this isn't filtering correctly. But whatever. Gonna go game by game, starting with the Hawks and Detroit. Starting on the Atlanta side, from an injury standpoint, we don't have anything unexpected. Kristaps Porzingis is out tonight. Trae Young remains out. Porzingis' absence does make Onyeka Okongwu look a bit more appealing. Mo Gay becomes a little bit more appealing, though he is already up to $4,500. Not much ownership projected to come into the Hawks right now. You have Jalen Johnson projected for about 15% ownership. He's the only player on DraftKings projected above 10%. Onyeka Okongwu and Nickeil Alexander-Walker both coming in around 5 to 6%. Everybody else is sub 5%. So not too much ownership coming in here. Not a lot of injury news that was unexpected that leaves us value or anything like that. Jalen Johnson has been extremely good so far this season. You've seen him take on a bigger playmaking role with Trae Young out. Obviously, he's a capable scorer as well. I am getting to 17% of him at 10K. It is a relatively short slate. Again, if you wanted to kind of pump the brakes there and not play as much Jalen Johnson because of the second half of a back-to-back coming off a double overtime game, that is perfectly fine. At the same time, 1.45 DraftKings points per minute. If they do keep this game competitive in Detroit, it's very likely that Jalen Johnson is playing a big role. 26% usage rate, 31% assist percentage, 15.5% rebounding percentage so far this season. True triple-double threat anytime he's playing. Projected to play around 35 to 36 minutes here. So again, nothing wrong if you want to downgrade him a little bit. I may actually end up doing that on my own, but I am only getting to 17% right now. That's not a number that I'm really concerned with. Basically, the way that I would approach this personally is if I am playing a lot of lineups and I run through my process and I see that I'm getting some, inordinate amount of Jalen Johnson, then I would probably say, all right, I realize that there is some extra risk baked in here because of yesterday and maybe downgrade him a little bit. But right now, having 15 to 20% of him, that isn't an amount that's, breaking my night if he does only end up playing 3 quarters because the Hawks just don't show up to this game. So I'm perfectly fine with that. He is, obviously still a very high upside play. He's one of the highest projected guys on the slate. Overall, we have him as, I don't know why nothing is sorting right. Sorry about that. Reminder, this is still free, but we have Jalen Johnson right now on the main slate. You can see that all the games are included here. But Jalen Johnson overall as the 7th highest fantasy point projection. You remove Nikola Jokic and Luka Doncic from the main slate, and he's like 5th. So one of the highest projected guys on the slate, and just looks very good, even though there is some added risk there. Beyond him, though, Onyeka Okongwu, you get somewhat of a bump with Porzingis out, just makes his playing time a little bit more stable and all of that. But he is already up to $7,400, so it's not like it leaves a ton of room, a ton of extra value there. 1.12 DraftKings points per minute this season. Similarly with Alexander Walker, he is already $6,700. We have seen plenty of usage from him. 24.5% usage rate is the 3rd highest on the team, excluding Trae Young, behind only Jalen Johnson and Kristaps Porzingis. No Porzingis tonight either, so you should see the offense running even a little bit more through Nickeil Alexander-Walker. He's averaged 1.03 DraftKings points per minute this season, but he is also up to $6,700, likely to play low 30s in minutes. Dyson Daniels, Zachary Reese-Sachet, Mo Gay, these guys are all playable, but low priority guys. They're not showing up for me right now. They're not showing up for the field. Dyson Daniels does give you a lot of steal upside, defensive stat upside. We know that that is nice in large field tournaments just because it is a stat that is not directly related to a game's total. So you can get some extra fantasy production from someone like Dyson Daniels without it necessarily cutting into Jalen Johnson or Nickeil Alexander-Walker, the higher usage guys on the team. So that is always nice. Plus, there's some added volatility there as well. But still, at $7,300, he's not really showing up for me much. Reese-Sachet, same kind of thing. You can get some defensive stats. Generally, he's playing mid-20s in minutes. He's $4,700, which doesn't look super appealing on this particular slate. So I don't think there's any true priorities from the Hawks here. I would say that Jalen Johnson is the top option, followed by Onyeka Okongwu and Nickeil Alexander-Walker as the 2nd and 3rd. On the Detroit side, looks pretty similar. A few secondary options here. Nothing that I think is a clear priority. Cade Cunningham, not surprisingly, is getting the most ownership. Still trying to figure out why the filters aren't working, but Cade Cunningham is getting the most ownership at about 16%. Obviously, the highest projected guy on the team. Very, very high ceiling. Does get a little bit of elevated risk, I guess, because of the same thing that I was talking about with the Hawks being on the second end of the back-to-back, coming off double overtime. Does increase the chances of the game blowing out early a little bit, but Cunningham, very, very good. If the game does blow out, it's pretty likely that Cunningham is having a more efficient than projected first 3 quarters or whatever. Projects for about 51.5 DraftKings points in about 35 minutes played. 10,500, reasonable price tag. I am only getting to about half the field, getting to about 9% of Cunningham, but definitely one of those plays where it's not for any clear reason. Like, I don't think he's a bad play or anything like that. He is a very good option. Asar Thompson getting 10% ownership, along with about 8% coming into Tobias Harris. Pretty cheap price tags on those guys, both likely to play somewhere in the 25 to 30 minute range. Asar Thompson at 5,600, Harris at 5,300. They're both secondary plays. They both can fit into your lineup sort of as like a last guy in type piece. I'm getting to 10% Thompson. I'm getting to 9% Harris. Beyond that, nothing that really stands out. You do have a $3,500 price tag on Jaden Ivey. We know that he can be a good point per minute guy, but we do also know he's not playing a lot of minutes as he works his way back from injury. We do have a relevant Q tag that I forgot to mention on the Pistons as well. Jalen Duren is probable. He is likely to be around 5% owned. I think that's perfectly fine for him. Obviously, very high upside player. Projects for about 42 points. Fantasy points at 7,900. Center, does come with a high opportunity cost, but no problems with Duren. Duncan Robinson is questionable, though. If Robinson's out, we'll have to see who moves into the starting lineup in his place. If it is Jenkins, that would, I think, be the most fantasy-friendly situation. Jenkins is a solid point per minute guy so far this season, producing 1.1 DraftKings points per minute. Obviously, you expect that to come down if he moves into the starting lineup and plays more minutes alongside Cade Cunningham, but he's still a solid fantasy producer. He's only $4,200. Karis LeVert is $4,500. He would be a potential option. He's somebody that we have seen in the past from a fantasy standpoint. You do pretty clearly prefer from, when he's operating as a sixth man coming off the bench. He does tend to disappear a bit when he's playing alongside other primary ball handlers like Cade Cunningham. But at 4,500, if he were to start, he still would look, better than playing 22 minutes off the bench, just because the playing time would increase. And then another option would be Ron Holland. He could move into the starting lineup. He's not a very good point per minute fantasy guy. Probably still wouldn't project for enough minutes to be anything more than like a secondary, value type option. So there are different ways that the starting lineup could go if Robinson were to miss this game. They could also, I guess, go big with like Isaiah Stewart, but I think that's less likely. So definitely would be a spot to keep your eye on the starting lineup. The preferences from a fantasy standpoint would be Jenkins, then LeVert, then Holland, I think, in terms of who replaces Duncan Robinson in the starting lineup. But with the way things look right now, no true priorities from this game. Jalen Johnson, Cade Cunningham, Harris, Thompson, and Duren are probably the guys that I would want to get to the most. Okongwu, pretty similar to Duren as well in terms of priority status. For Cleveland, taking on the Indiana Pacers in Indiana, they are 3 or 4 point favorites, have about a 118 total here, and they are shorthanded as well, so it is going to open stuff up. Jared Allen is out. Lonzo Ball is out. Darius Garland is out. Sam Merrill is out. Larry Nance is out. And Max Strus remains out as well. So there are a lot of minutes available here for the Cavs. It's still not completely priced in either. So this is a team that I do expect to get a lot of. I will want to pay attention to ownership as well. Craig Porter Jr. in particular is not projected for much ownership right now. And I think that comes up. If not, I end up playing a lot of him. But we will want to pay attention to that. I do think it comes up because we did already get the big Craig Porter Jr. game previously, and I think people will be aware of that, especially with Lonzo out as well. I do think our minutes projection is a little bit aggressive on Porter now also. Probably should be around 22 to 24 minutes, not 26, unless he starts. So we'll have to keep an eye on that also. I think it's likely that we get Tomlin in the starting lineup instead of Porter. So these two minutes projections probably flip. Porter is a good point per minute guy, though. So Craig Porter is the guy that I'm getting tons of right now. But again, that is because we have a higher projection on him than I think we will actually end up with. Still, if he's only 9 or 10% owned, that is certainly a relatively contrarian value option that you can get to because he is a good point per minute guy, and they will put the ball in his hands with the second unit, etc. Still should play north of 20 minutes. So I do like him, just probably not to the extent that I like him right now when he's in 70-something% of my lineups. Overall this season, just shy of a fantasy point per minute guy on only a 13% usage rate, 21% assist percentage. So, can get it done in a variety of ways. As far as the other Cavs, Evan Mobley getting 25% ownership at 8,500, Jalen Tyson getting 33% at 4,800, Mitchell getting 22% at 9,500, DeAndre Hunter getting about 10%, and then Tomlin only getting about 4%. So Mobley, Tyson, Mitchell, and Hunter, all to some extent, looking like pretty popular plays, with Tyson, Mobley, and Mitchell being the three most popular. And I don't really have any issues with that. I'm actually getting like 2x the field right now on Evan Mobley. He's projected for about 25% ownership. I have about 45%. I think that the $8,500 price tag looks pretty good for him. There is more rebounding upside for him when Jared Allen is out. This is the second half of a back-to-back for the Cavs as well. They did not have Allen yesterday either. Mobley played 38.7 minutes. He got the start at center, which is valuable for him. He is somebody that, you just generally prefer him when he's getting minutes at the 5, and with no Jared Allen, there should be plenty of those. So same caveats about the back-to-back, but, it's still a game that has like a 3 or a 4 point spread. I assume you're getting normal minutes from Mobley. And I'm getting over the field with, a 34-minute projection. It's not like we're projecting 38 or 39 minutes like he played yesterday. So that makes me feel pretty good about it as well. You can see we actually have him projected for a double-double with no Jared Allen. So that looks good. So far this season, without Jared Allen on the floor, 1.24 DraftKings points per minute in 452 minutes for Mobley, 13.5% rebounding percentage, 25% usage rate. Looks really good here in this spot, so I like getting there. Jalen Tyson, I'm right around the field at 37%. Should just play pretty big minutes as a starter here. Played 34 minutes yesterday. Overall this season, 0.87 DraftKings points per minute without Allen, but that's not super relevant to Jalen Tyson. Overall, 0.92 DraftKings points per minute. Relatively low usage guy at 16%. Doesn't do any one thing particularly well, but he does get defensive stats at a relatively high rate. He does contribute at least a little bit in every stat category, and that's really the kind of thing that you like to see when you're getting a spot starter or something close to a spot starter. Like Karis LeVert, for example, mentioned him when we were talking about the Pistons. He's somebody that you generally will see a bigger drop off in his per minute production the more minutes he plays, assuming that he has healthy teammates, because so much of his production is coming as a facilitator and or a scorer that when you move him into the starting lineup alongside more ball dominant players, his production just goes out the window. Whereas you take someone like Jalen Tyson, who is producing fantasy points at a pretty high rate, but it's not coming from, a 20+% usage rate or a 20+% assist percentage. It's easier for someone like that to slide into the starting lineup, not see a massive drop off in terms of his production, since he's not super reliant on having the ball in his hands anyway. He's just contributing through, getting an assist here and there, a rebound here or there, some defensive stats, knocking down some open shots when he gets the opportunity. Donovan Mitchell getting 22% ownership at 9,500. I have 25% of him as well. So far this season, 1.4 DraftKings points per minute overall for him. If we take Darius Garland off the floor, it is generally good for Mitchell. So far this season, still 1.4 DraftKings points per minute. So haven't really seen a change there in terms of fantasy production, but 33% usage rate without Garland on the floor, 27% assist percentage without Garland on the floor. If we compare that to the time that Mitchell has shared the floor with Darius Garland, he has a 28% usage rate. So it's about a 5-point bump in usage rate. He has a 20% assist percentage. So it's about, I think, what did I say, a 7-point bump or something in assist percentage. So you have seen probably some efficiency issues where you don't have Darius Garland out there to take some attention, some defensive attention away from Mitchell. But at the very least, from an upside standpoint, Darius Garland being out is good for Mitchell because he is getting more assist opportunities. He is getting more usage, getting more shots up. And over a larger sample, I'd expect the fantasy production to increase at least somewhat as well. So I do like him here. And then DeAndre Hunter, I think, kind of fits into that like Asar Thompson, Tobias Harris type spot. He is 6,300, so he's a little bit more expensive, but he just kind of fits in there as your last guy in. Not a primary scorer, but does a little bit of everything well. He does actually have a 22% usage rate in 136 minutes without Darius Garland on the floor this year. 0.9 DraftKings points per minute. You could see some increased rebounding as well as a result of the smaller Cleveland lineup without Jared Allen. You're moving Evan Mobley down to the 5, but then you're also essentially moving DeAndre Hunter down a position as well. It's one less 7-foot guy on the floor to take rebounds away from DeAndre Hunter. So I think the priorities here, the field pretty much, I think, has it right. Mobley, Tyson, and Mitchell. Craig Porter as a value play I like, but I don't like nearly as much, again, as it would seem right now, because I think that our projection on Craig Porter is just a little bit too high. It seems like we're assuming that he starts, but I don't think that he will. On the Indiana side, Jared Allen being out, does make Cleveland probably a little bit worse defensively. You do still have, Evan Mobley as a very good defender, but the Pacers have about a 115 team total, which is middle of the pack-ish on this slate. And they look more like the Pistons and the Hawks than the Cavs in terms of player priorities. TJ McConnell getting 18% ownership at 4,800, likely to play low to mid 20s in minutes. We have him projected for about 23 minutes here at 4,800, 24 DraftKings points, getting 18% ownership. He's my highest owned pacer right now as well at 13%. Other than that, a bunch of guys between 5 and 10%, all of Pascal Siakam, Jay Huff, Benedict Mathurin, Andrew Nembhard projected in that 5 to 10% range. We will also want to keep an eye on the Pacers starting lineup. They have used different versions of it recently, where you've had Ben Shepherd in and Jarris Walker on the bench, or you've had the inverse with Jarris Walker in and Shepherd on the bench. I assume that Shepherd is starting for right now, in which case neither of Walker or a 4K Ben Shepherd look particularly appealing. If you were to get Jarris Walker in the starting lineup, his playing time would probably increase by a few minutes, and he would look somewhat better, although still I don't think like a priority. Jay Huff's salary jumped from $4,000 to $5,000 since the last time he played. So he does still give you some upside, but certainly not as appealing or as much of a priority as he was last time he played when he was, I think, 58% owned at 4K. So nothing, no true priorities here. There are relatively high upside guys, but a healthy team for all intents and purposes. Obviously, Halliburton is out, but Halliburton has been out for the entire season. The Pacers in general have been really banged up this season. So at this point, unless you were to get a new injury like Mathurin disappearing or Siakam disappearing, they're pretty much going to be correctly priced. Overall, Siakam, the best point per minute guy, 1.25 DraftKings points per minute this year, 29% usage rate leads the team, 21% assist percentage is second or third behind Nembhard and TJ McConnell, second amongst the starters. So another guy that, can flirt with triple doubles, does a lot when he's on the floor, but he is also expensive at $8,800. Benedict Mathurin's gotten expensive. He's up to $7,200. He's averaged 1.03 DraftKings points per minute this year. Nembhard is up to $6,500 as well. He's been a fantasy point per minute guy. So any of them clearly can exceed their salaries, but from a median standpoint, they are correctly priced, if not a little bit overpriced, makes them not look like real priorities here. Now getting to a game that is more fantasy friendly, particularly on one side, but starting with the Milwaukee side, we have a Q tag on Gary Trent Jr. I don't think that matters too much for fantasy. He's likely to give you 24 or 25 minutes off the bench if he plays. If he doesn't, you're probably just getting minutes kind of spread out, a couple here and a couple there, to different guys, Kyle Kuzma, Cole Anthony. You probably get more Gary Harris, which is pretty much never relevant for fantasy. So I don't think the Gary Trent status matters a ton. The only guy getting ownership here is Giannis at $11,500. He is projected for 21% ownership. I have 15%. You don't need me to tell you that Giannis against the Wizards is really good. The Wizards are a cheat code for fantasy. They play at one of the fastest paces in the league. They play less defense than anybody in the league on using dunks and threes metrics. They are fourth in pace and dead last in adjusted defensive rating this season. So getting guys against them is obviously always nice. But the problem with the Bucks in general, Arca tells us that I think Trent started over Kuzma last game. Porter started over Kuzma, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it was Rollins, Porter, AJ Green, Giannis, and Miles Turner was the starting lineup last game, with Trent playing 25 minutes off the bench. Kuzma played 22 in that one. So yeah, it was Kevin Porter that moved into the starting lineup. He played like 24 and a half minutes. So the matchup is really good for Milwaukee. The problem is that you've had Giannis miss games recently. So as a result, Ryan Rollins is now $7,900. Kevin Porter just came back to a real salary at $6,100. Expect him to be somewhat limited from a playing time standpoint, but still probably play like mid-ish, mid 20s minutes, maybe upper 20s. We have him at 28 right now. Could certainly knock a minute or two off of that with no issue. But at 6,100, playing alongside Giannis, you can only get so excited about him. You have Ryan Rollins, who's going to have the ball in his hands a lot as well. So you are getting 7% ownership to Kevin Porter Jr. I only have about 2% right now. 2% ownership to Rollins. I have 2%. It is a revenge game for Rollins if you want to go that route. But again, he's almost 8K. We have seen the league kind of start to adjust and make him do different things as well, which has affected his efficiency some. That being said, the Wizards are the Wizards. I'm certainly not going to get too bogged down in defensive scheme for this team because it just doesn't really matter. The only, the big thing holding Ryan Rollins' interest back is that nearly 8K price tag. But Giannis, if you can get there, great at 11.5. I do think it's actually kind of interesting that he's in 15% of my lineups and pretty close to his ownership projection, because in general, I actually haven't been getting a lot of the pay up options so far this season. Obviously, every slate is different, but I've been going more balanced in general. So the fact that Giannis is showing up a good amount, even for me, is pretty indicative, I think, of just him being a really good play. But again, cheat code against Washington. Giannis is amazing. If you can find the value, great. On the Washington side, we have guys missing this game, and it does open up value here. We will need to see a starting lineup to see exactly what they are going to do, but Trey Johnson is out and has been out. Corey Kispert is still out. He's missed the last couple of games. The big change is that Alex Sarr is also out. He missed a couple of games recently, but then had been back for 3. The most recent game that he missed, you also had Marvin Bagley out. That was the game that Tristan Vukcevic got the start and then only played 17 minutes and absolutely fucked everybody. Was like 80% owned in fantasy. You have Marvin Bagley back, though. My assumption is that Marvin Bagley starts, but we will need to see that. The last game that Sarr was out and Bagley started, Bagley actually played 31 minutes and Vukcevic played 20. So you actually got a couple of minutes alongside each other. I wouldn't project that or necessarily expect it. Right now, we actually have them leaving about 4 minutes on the table with 24 going to Bagley, 20 going to Vukcevic. That could happen. I mean, we saw the game that Vukcevic started, Washington against a Toronto team that had one of Poeltl or Mamukelashvili on the floor at all times. Washington still tried to go small. It didn't really work, but nothing Washington does is going to work generally against anybody. So there is volatility with the playing time here, but you also have very, very cheap salaries. Bagley projected for about 39% ownership at 3,500. Vukcevic projected for about 34% ownership at 3,300. I think on a 5 or a 6 game slate, you could play them together. Like it's probably pretty borderline. I think that clearly they both still project as good point per dollar plays, even if you just assume that they like split 44 minutes or something. And obviously they could play more than that. The problem is there is obviously an opportunity cost, not only just to using a roster spot, but you're using your center spot and your utility spot. So you're using the 2 most valuable spots that you have if you play them together. So that's where I think it gets a little bit dicey. But I wouldn't necessarily set a rule to never do it. I would just make sure that I'm not going crazy with it. Like if you just run an optimizer, I don't know for sure, but I would expect that you get a good amount of them together because the optimizer doesn't account for anything other than median projection. So do pay attention to that in your roster construction. I think it's fine to do. I just wouldn't, I probably wouldn't want to be doing it like everywhere. That being said, I'm about even with the field on Bagley. Right now I have 40%. I'm only half the field on Vukcevic. I have 16% of him. But again, I think, either of them are fine. One of them or both of them here and there are fine. But I do prefer Bagley, assuming that he is starting. We know that he's a good point per minute guy historically. It's just a matter of him being a better fantasy player than real life NBA player tends to keep his playing time in check when guys are not hurt. But obviously with no Sarr, the minutes should be there for him, especially if he is starting. 1.14 DraftKings points per minute for Bagley this season. Vukcevic is just shy of a fantasy point per minute. So Vukcevic, good point per minute guy. Bagley is better. So yeah, they both look like good value plays. Also, I probably get to more of both of them once the Craig Porter Jr. projection is fixed, just because if I have 70% of $3,900 Porter, I can get away from some of the Bagley and Vukcevic, whereas if Porter looks worse, obviously Bagley and Vukcevic are going to relatively look better. So I expect that I would actually end up getting a little bit more of them. Stephen Leibowitz said I kind of like George a lot. Yeah, he's getting the most ownership on the Wizards other than Bagley and Vukcevic. He is projected for about 16%. I have 22%, 6,300. He has been pretty good for the most part this season. You've had some dud games mixed in here and there, which is to be expected. He is still only in his second year, mid-first round pick last year for Washington. But overall, 1.07 DraftKings points per minute, 21.5% usage rate, nearly a 23% assist percentage as well. If we take Alex Sarr off the floor, Sarr has a 27.5% usage rate this year. He's the highest usage guy on the Wizards. So taking him off to see what, if any, changes we get for Keyshawn George. I would expect that you see at least somewhat of a bump because Sarr actually has an 18% assist percentage this year in addition to the 27% assist usage rate. So like you still have CJ McCollum, who obviously is going to be involved as a scorer and a playmaker, Middleton to some extent as well. But Keyshawn George does those things also. 1.13 DraftKings points per minute without Sar on the floor. So a bit of a bump for him. Usage rate at 22%, but you see that assist percentage get up to 27.3%. He actually has the highest assist percentage on the team in minutes that Alex Sar has not played. Some of that probably has to do with like playing with the second unit and stuff like that, since Sar is generally with the first unit. But still, you expect to see a bump for Keyshawn George. I do like him. He's not free or super cheap, but I do think that you should expect a bump with Sar out. I do think that George looks pretty good. Also, just realized I forgot to turn my ring light on, so hopefully I don't end up doing half the show in the dark. Beyond that, I have 11% Koulibaly. I have 11% Middleton. That's pretty close to the field. 7% projected ownership to $5,300 Bilal Koulibaly. 10% projected to $4,800 Chris Middleton. Middleton has not had a huge role this season. He's been out there, like he's on this team basically for mentorship, leadership reasons. So is CJ McCollum, but McCollum has chosen to still, be a relatively high usage contributor to the team, whereas Chris Middleton has clearly taken a veteran's, kind of backseat role here. But that being said, Middleton is only $4,800. He does see a little bit of a bump in assist percentage, I believe, without Sar, and he has been relatively involved as a playmaker anyway. 17% assist percentage overall this season, about a 17 or so percent usage rate. Also, last guy in type piece, similar to your Tobias Harris, Asar Thompson type guys in that price range. 4% ownership coming into Whitmore, 7% to McCollum, 3% to Carrington. They're all secondary last guy in type pieces. Not a lot to say about them, but they all should play decent minutes, probably looking around 18 minutes for Cam Whitmore. You should get 30 minutes or so from McCollum, probably low 20s from Carrington. So the priorities here are in the front court with Bagley and Vukcevic. Of the other guys, I think Keyshawn George is the top option, and then it's just secondary plays with Koulibaly, Middleton, Champagny, Whitmore, McCollum, etc. But Alex Sar being out does impact this team a lot. Bulls taking on the Magic in Orlando, back to a game that has a lot of secondary plays. Bulls about a 114 team total here, about 7-point dogs at the Magic. Orlando's been a solid team overall defensively again this season. The Bulls started out the year well and then have started to play like the Bulls again. Ayo Dosunmu projected for 16% ownership at $5,400. I'm only getting 3% there. He's fine, but it's also just the kind of guy where generally you're going to look in any DFS sport, but basketball, you're going to be looking, if you are going to make ownership pivots, to do it in the ranges where you have the most alternatives. And generally that's just going to be in the mid-range. There are going to be plenty of guys maybe there are a few $100 more. But there's going to be plenty of guys at similar price points that give you the exact same range of outcomes as somebody like Ayo Dosunmu. So he's somebody where if he were projected for 5% ownership, maybe I'd want 15, but with him projected around 15 right now, I'm only getting about 3%. Certainly could change between now and lock. He's just not the kind of guy that anybody should have a super strong opinion on. He's not a primary anything, but he is somebody that's likely to go play 30 plus minutes and is just involved enough in a variety of ways that he's capable of exceeding his salary here and there, but not an ideal matchup. And again, just plenty of other guys that do look similar to him. 0.93 DraftKings points per minute overall for Dosunmu this year. 9% ownership coming into Giddey, 7% to Kevin Huerter. Everyone else is projected for less than 5% ownership on the Bulls. I have 6% of Josh Giddey. He's actually my highest owned guy from Chicago. He's been fantastic this year. 1.5 DraftKings points per minute. He is doing everything at a high level. 26% usage rate, 41% assist percentage, 15% rebounding percentage. But he has also gotten expensive. He is $9,700, puts him $800 less expensive than Cade Cunningham on a team that has a total about 6 points higher. I think Giddey is the kind of perfect, sub 10% owned tournament play, as far as if you're playing a lot of lineups, you have a bunch of chalk pieces and you need a low owned, high upside guy. Obviously, Josh Giddey fits the bill there, but he's not somebody I think you're building around. As far as pay up options go, probably getting to more Cunningham, getting to more Giannis, We still have, 2.5 games to go as well. And then also you can just play, more balanced builds if you want to. But where you can afford Giddey, obviously very high ceiling. 3% Trey Jones, 3% Kevin Huerter, 2% Buzelis for me. Nothing really standing out for me from the Bulls side. The Orlando side looks a bit better. 25% projected ownership coming into Jalen Suggs, 16% to Wendell Carter, 19% to Desmond Bane, 18% to Franz Wagner. So 4 guys on this Orlando team are projected for essentially 15 to 25% ownership. I'm getting a little bit less than that, but I am getting to them. I have 19% Wendell Carter Jr. against his former team. He is only $5,500. We have him projected to play about 30 minutes right now. In Orlando's most recent games, we have gotten 32 in the most recent. He played 22 the game before that, missed the game, played 22 the game before that, 32 previously. So 29 and a half minutes per game overall this season for Carter, 30.3 in his last 10. I think that he's a perfectly fine value play at center. Does come with opportunity costs that will keep the ownership in check some. Carter is interesting too. Like if you are going mid-range, he's the kind of play that ends up, I think, being really interesting from a roster construction standpoint, because you're just going to see so many lineups that are filtered toward at least one of Bagley or Vucevic at center, if not both of them. Obviously, if you play both of them, you can't have Wendell Carter. But they're just going to dominate ownership at the position enough, I think, that it makes Wendell Carter somebody that, like at 5,500, projected for nearly 30 fantasy points on a lot of 6-game slates. That's somebody that actually would end up coming in around 25-30% owned. But simply because you have these 2 cheap options on the Wizards, it cuts that ownership in half, give or take. And so if you do go more balanced, like Carter is somebody that is clearly underpriced. It's just he's less underpriced than the min salary guys that the Wizards have with Alex Sarr out. Plenty of upside for the salary here on Wendell Carter, though. The Bulls have played at the second fastest pace so far this season. They are also bottom 10 in defensive rating, so it looks good in general for the Magic. Desmond Bane in 13% of my lineups. Jalen Suggs only in 11%. He's $7K. He's gotten a little bit more expensive. He has been solid, though. Certainly a beneficiary of Paolo Banchero being out. We got a horrible start to the season for Desmond Bane, but he's seemingly turned things around at least somewhat as well. He's up to a fantasy point per minute this year. Jalen Suggs, though, 1.25 DraftKings points per minute overall. If you take Paolo Banchero off the floor, which obviously he has missed a lot of games at this point, but 231 minutes played with no Paolo Banchero, 1.23 DraftKings points per minute for Suggs, 25% usage rate, 28% assist percentage, gets blocks, gets steals. Really strong play, I think. But again, just at 7K, there's always going to be guys where, if he's 25% owned, there's going to be just so many guys that are like 10, 15% owned that even if they project a little bit lower, they give you a very similar range of outcomes at a lower ownership. So it is just generally the price point that I like making pivots the most. Anthony Black, Arcathelza just asked about him. He's been playing extremely well, and I think probably has earned more minutes. Tristan da Silva has probably also earned more minutes, though. And you have Franz Wagner, and you have Desmond Bane, and you have Jalen Suggs. So the Magic just sort of have like an abundance of riches here where it's at rising prices. It becomes difficult to be really confident about the secondary guys on the Magic. But at the same time, you do get a situation where, like, if they're playing well, they can get extra minutes. Anthony Black did play 32 minutes last game. He has, again, been very good this season. And it does seem like, has probably moved ahead of Da Silva as far as playing time goes at this point. Their last game was against Detroit on the 28th. You got Da Silva as the starter, but Da Silva only played 21 minutes. Black played 32 off the bench. The 2 games before that, Black played 28, but you had a game where Suggs only played 16. You had a game that Suggs missed. But 30 on the 22nd, so 4 games ago, 29 minutes for Black, 32 for Suggs, 26 for Suggs, 29 for Black on the 20th. it is likely that you're getting 28 to 30 minutes from Anthony Black, but he is also up to $5,700 overall this season. Black has produced just shy of a fantasy point per minute. He's getting 7% ownership. I have 5% right now. Similarly, 7% ownership to a $4,700 Tristan Da Silva. I have 5%. He is producing 0.86 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. Franz Wagner is getting 18% at 8,700. I only have 7% of him. He does have a very high ceiling. He's at 1.2 DraftKings points per minute without Banchero, but you also just have that fully priced in to his salary at this point, and he is getting ownership. So again, I think I can get some lower owned guys that I like in place of Wagner. That being said, it is a good matchup. He is obviously a very good player, very good fantasy producer, good play, just not one that I have a ton of right now in my lineups. Goga Batadze, Jonathan Isaac, both getting 3% ownership at sub 4K. I have 3% Goga as the backup here behind Wendell Carter. You should get probably not 48 minutes, but something close to it. Like you'll get some minutes with Jonathan Isaac at the 5 most likely. But like in their last game, you got 14 minutes from Goga. You got 32 from Carter. They should get somewhere close to 48 minutes combined. We have Goga projected for about 16 minutes right now. We have Carter projected for about 30. So yeah, like Goga's in play. Obviously, if Carter gets in foul trouble, you get more minutes for Goga, but nowhere near a priority because he is actually more expensive than Bagley and Vukcevic. So like from a point per dollar standpoint, he's going to be behind those guys, but he will also be like 1/10 the ownership. So he's a pivot to those guys, but clearly not the priority. TDID Forever said WCJ seems to be the play in this spot. Yeah, he's the guy that I have the most from Orlando right now. That's still only 19%, but he is the guy I'm getting the most of. Charlotte taking on Brooklyn in Brooklyn, about a 1.5 or 2 point spread in this game, about a 115 total for the Hornets, about a 113 total for the Nets. We do have a Q tag on Trey Mann for Charlotte. I don't think it should matter too much, kind of like Gary Trent. If he's out, you're probably just getting minutes spread around to a handful of guys that you're still not really interested in playing. In their last game, Mann played 10.5 minutes off the bench. Liam McNeely played 13 minutes. You did get like 25 minutes in regulation from Sion James, but he's not a particularly good fantasy producer. So I don't think the Trey Mann status matters too much. Salon is available. Nobody that really matters is out here. So pretty straightforward spot for Charlotte, which generally means not tons of fantasy interest. But the exception to that is $6,400 Brandon Miller is getting 19% ownership, and I have 35% right now. He is somebody that I am getting to a lot. He's just a little bit underpriced at $6,400, probably giving us somewhere around 30 minutes or so. In that last game, we got 25 minutes, including overtime, but I believe he had something happen. Maybe not. But I do like Brandon Miller here. I think that he will get some ownership, but I think he's still underpriced at $6,400. Prior to the game where he played 25 minutes, including part of overtime, he played 32 minutes on the 28th, 28 on the 26th. He's averaged 28 minutes per game over his last 10. So I do like him here. I think he's a bit underpriced. Overall this season, Miller is at 1.11 DraftKings points per minute in the 6 games that he has played. So you probably will see the salary jump sooner than later. He has a 31% usage rate overall as well. I want to double check which games he's played with LaMelo Ball in. But we have seen plenty of production from him so far, also about a 19% assist percentage. LaMelo was active for all 6 of the Brandon Miller games so far. 31 minutes, 9 minutes in the game he got hurt, and then 26, 28, 32, and 25. So I do think expecting around 30 minutes makes sense. Usage has been there. He's been a secondary playmaker as well. Non-existent rebounding numbers and still at 1.1 DraftKings points per minute, only a 4.8% rebounding percentage for him. So that maybe comes up a little bit. Brandon Miller looks good. Beyond that, no priorities for the Hornets. Ryan Kalkbrenner getting 9% ownership. Another value option at center, less of a priority than the Wizards guys. but getting about 9% ownership and in 8% of my lineups, just a way to save some ownership if you need to. 0.89 DraftKings points per minute for Kalkbrenner so far this season. And then you get, higher upside guys that are pretty much correctly priced, but that you can mix in as contrarian pieces that still have a high ceiling. Miles Bridges, Con Knippel, LaMelo Ball, all projected for 3% ownership or less, all in 4 or 5% of my lineups. I'm not building around any of them, but just perfect guys, sort of like I was saying with Josh Giddey, where if I just have a lineup where everybody's like 20, 30% owned somewhere in there, and then I have $8,200 left at Ford, throw in Miles Bridges, hope that you get the game where he knocks down 4 threes and gets like 12 rebounds. Obviously, like with any of these guys, Kneppel, Bridges, LaMelo, there are enough mouths to feed on this team that they're correctly priced for their average production. But in any one game, like you can get the Miles Bridges game, you can get the LaMelo game. Like LaMelo's $8,600. This is somebody that in the past has been like 10K, obviously not producing at the level, at times this year that maybe the Hornets would like, but he's still at 1.44 DraftKings points per minute overall, 32% usage rate, 42% assist percentage. This guy can obviously still get 50 fantasy points any given game, even though it's not particularly likely. He doesn't play as many minutes as the top end guys at his position, but that's why he's $8,600, averaging 29 and a half minutes per game for the season. We have him projected for about 29 minutes here. So like there are obvious negatives on LaMelo, but any one game, like LaMelo can still go nuts, obviously. So any of those guys as like secondary pieces in, or, the contrarian plays, it's always nice in tournaments when your contrarian guys are like legitimate, very good NBA players and not, I found this 3% owned guy that is the 7th guy off the bench. But definitely not building around any of them. Brandon Miller, the only guy that stands out as a priority for me from the Hornets. On the net side, bigger priorities there. Yegor Yeoman, 45% projected 45% projected ownership at 4,400. I have 45% of him as well. Just looks like a very good value option. Guard eligible. So it's still, a valuable position. Would prefer, a small forward, but not quite as high an opportunity cost as at the center position with Bagley and Vukcevic. Overall this season, he's been a productive point per minute guy. He's likely to start and give you 29 or 30 minutes here, and his salary just still hasn't really adjusted at only 4,400. Yeoman so far this season, 0.93 DraftKings points per minute, 19% usage rate, 24% assist percentage. Just, a solid point per dollar guy that looks pretty good. Noah Clowney getting 15% at 5,500. Nick Claxton getting 17% at 6,400. Tyrese Martin and Michael Porter Jr. both 10 to 13% as well. I do have 29% Noah Clowney right now, which is about 2x the field. It doesn't feel great coming off of the massively terrible game he had last time out, but he's still affordable. You are still getting reasonable playing time from him. He played only 21 minutes last game, but prior to that, 35, 39, 37, and 37 for Clowney. That last game against Milwaukee, he played a ton in the first half. He got hockey line change benched in the second half when the Bucks went on an immediate 7-0 run to start the half. And then he just never came back into a blowout. So I'm not super concerned. I think it's a pretty solid spot to try and get a bounce back game from Clowney at modest ownership. Again, like it's the Nets, they suck. All those caveats apply, but they're only 2-point dogs. They're at home. And maybe, I think people might just be scared off of Clowney a little bit. He was fully on his way to playing big minutes again, just like he had been in previous games. He finished this game with 21.4 minutes played. He played 1 minute and 37 seconds in the second half. So he played like 20 minutes in the first half. He didn't do anything while he was on the floor, but he played 20 minutes. I still think playing time should be there for Clowney. We have him projected for 32 minutes here. Overall this season, he's at 0.81 DraftKings points per minute. Again, the price tag is rising. He plays on a bad basketball team, et cetera, et cetera. There are a lot of things that could go wrong. And if 30% of my lineup suck because they have $5,500 Noah Clowney, it's not like I would be super surprised. But I do like the relatively modest ownership. I like the fact that he's forward eligible. And I like the fact, that last game, even though it was a complete dud, he still played 20 minutes in the first half. So I am happy to get there. I have 19% Claxton. I have 11% Porter and 9% Tyrese Martin. Not, no real stands there, but Claxton is another strong mid-range center option if you have a spot open. Again, plays for the Nets, all the caveats that come with that, but 1.06 DraftKings points per minute so far this season. He's doing a bit of everything. Nearly a 20% assist percentage, which is high, 14% rebounding percentage, 19% usage rate. I think Claxton looks perfectly fine. I have similar amounts of him and Wendell Carter Jr. at the cheaper price tag. Daron Sharp getting 5% ownership at 3,900. I think you can throw Daron Sharp in that like Goga Batadze basket, where obviously if you're going sub 4K at center, you're going to get better projections on Bagley and on Vucevic, but everybody knows that. And you're going to get 6-7 times the ownership coming into those guys as well. Daron Sharp's a good point per minute guy. You need one injury or foul trouble or whatever to Nick Claxton, and you're directly getting more minutes for Daron Sharp, who's a 1.08 DraftKings point per minute guy. So not somebody that like I want tons and tons of financial exposure to, but somebody that in those lineups where maybe I have a bunch of popular guys and then now I need a sub 4K center and I don't want to take on another 30 whatever percent owned Bagley or Vucevic, in that lineup, mix in Daron Sharp, mix in Goga, either of those guys. I think Goga and Sharp are more or less the same play. Finally, wrapping this one up, Clippers taking on Miami in Miami. For the Clippers, we have about a 115 total, about 120 for the Heat. The Clippers are without Derek Jones Jr., Bogdan Bogdanovic, and of course, Bradley Beal, who's out for the year. No Q tags there. For the Heat, we do have a Q tag on Jaime Jaquez, Q tag on Keshad Johnson, which is much less important. They have their entire team basically on the injury report, but with mostly available statuses. Tyler Hero is available. Nikola Jovic is available. Norm Powell's available. Terry Rozier is out. I don't remember why, but he's out. Andrew Wiggins available. So you're waiting on the status for Jaime Jaquez primarily. So starting on the Clippers side, James Harden is $9,800, getting 27% ownership. I have 31% right now. So you are getting a little bit more ownership to him, or actually quite a bit more ownership to him than guys priced around him that do have similar upside, like Cade Cunningham, who is a bit more expensive, Josh Giddey, who's in the same price range. Sometimes I would actually be getting to more. Like it is a reasonable spot if you wanted to give up some James Harden and then get to a bit more Giddey or get to a bit more of Cunningham or even like LaMelo, guys like that. That is an approach that I take sometimes with those, like not top end in like the Jokic range, but like second level stars like Harden. But right now, at least, I'm getting 31% of him. I'm in line with the field there. Obviously, I'm perfectly fine with that. We have seen Harden play at a high level for the most part this season, at least from a fantasy standpoint. Obviously not really contributing or correlating with Clippers wins. As Kawhi pointed out, he needs better teammates. But Harden, 1.44 DraftKings points per minute this year, 32% usage rate, 37% assist percentage. He has been a very good fantasy producer so far. The matchup against the Heat is not the best. Miami has the fourth best adjusted defensive rating so far this season. They have also played at the fastest pace, though. So that is a nice change. It feels like for every single year that I've been talking about fantasy basketball, a matchup with the Heat is just like this place where fantasy production goes to die because they play well defensively and they play slow as shit. They're not playing slow anymore. They've been the fastest team in the league. They are playing well defensively, but I'll take possessions over defensive efficiency in general. And then also, again, like the point per minute production that you're getting from Harden at a price tag that still hasn't quite reached 10K. Now you can add in some extra possessions potentially as well. He looks good. 12% ownership coming into Zubats, 13 to Kawhi, 19 to the value pieces in $5,300 John Collins and 4K Chris Dunn. I have 17% Zubats at 8K, so I'm a little bit over the field there. I think that's another spot where it's just going to naturally give you a little bit different roster construction to go to an 8K center on a slate where you have Vucevic, Bagley, other guys that you could pay down for like Goga and Sharp, but then also like Carter that is underpriced, Claxton that's favorably priced. I think just getting to Zubats is naturally going to be somewhat different. You could make that same case, by the way, for Nikola Vucevic going up against his former team. I'm not getting to him much. I don't think I even specifically mentioned him when I talked about the Bulls, but you could make the same sort of case. Like, you're just going to get a different build if you go to somebody like Zubac or Vucevic, who from a median projection standpoint isn't particularly appealing, but if they go for 55, 60, you probably don't really care. So I do think Zubac looks pretty interesting at 8K. I'm in line with the field, getting 13%. Kawhi Leonard at 7,800. Obviously, who knows what you're going to get from Kawhi at this point. But recently, 29 minutes in each of his last 2 games, 29, 29, 28, and 26 over his last 4. So expecting, around 30 minutes or so. He's at 31.3 minutes per game overall this season. I think he looks fine at 7,800. John Collins should give you low 30s in minutes. He played 36 last time out. He's actually at 31.8 in his last 5. We have him projected for 31.3. Gives you a solid, 25, 26 fantasy point projection at 5,300. Power forward eligibility, so not the most opportunity cost there either. 6 rebound projection, 14 point projection. Gets it done, in a couple different ways as well. I'm a little bit below the field. I have 11%, but I think he looks fine. Chris Dunn, I do only have 6%. That probably has a lot to do with Craig Porter Jr. and the fact that we had him over projected when I ran lineups. If you tell me that $3,900 Craig Porter is going to be 9% owned and play 26 minutes, and you tell me that Chris Dunn is going to be 19% owned, I'm obviously going to jam a lot of Porter. But once you cut Porter back to like 22 minutes, I assume that I start getting a little bit more of Chris Dunn and lose, a good amount of Porter. So Chris Dunn, just sort of your very unexciting 4K guy. Should give you minutes. What else he does, who knows? 0.69 DraftKings points per minute this season. Only a 13% usage rate, 13% assist percentage. He doesn't really do anything at a high rate other than get steals. But again, like, at least he's not reliant on James Harden really giving him the ball other than for wide open shots. He is somebody that will get his fantasy stats while not having to get in the way of James Harden and Kawhi. Those are guys that when they're cheap, you do feel a little bit better about, the fact that they're playing alongside the other, higher usage guys. BX Fizzle said Proctor has been outplaying Porter lately. He played 11 minutes last game. So did Porter. The last game that Garland was out, Porter was also out. I still think it's Porter. Probably. There is, some uncertainty there. I don't know that I would go so far as to say he's been out playing him, just because, like, we haven't really seen anything to necessarily like Porter didn't play in games. But yeah, if you wanted to go to Proctor, like, if Porter's ownership gets too high and you wanted to go to Proctor, I think that would be fine. I would still think that it's probably Porter first. We have like a 17, 18-minute projection on Proctor. So, like, basically once, let's say Porter's projection comes down to like 22 minutes, Proctor stays at 17 to 18, you'll probably end up with like a couple fantasy point median, but there is that volatility in playing time, and part of it's going to be with who's playing better. So that is always something that's nice, like, especially if you're playing large field tournaments and you decide you want to, you're thinking about taking a stand on Proctor, especially if like ownership comes up on Porter, then the nice thing is, like, if Proctor plays well, he can just get more minutes. Like, those things are correlated. So Porter would be the one that I went to first, but again, it's not like tons of confidence there. Josh said, do you think Huff starts versus Mobley? Huff's been starting. I assume they go Huff and Jackson. I do not think they go Jackson Bradley. Actually, I'm not even sure what you're asking. Like, I think they go with Huff and Jackson both. Although I guess they could just go with one since Cleveland is smaller now. But yeah, Huff's been in the starting lineup at least, I think, 2 games now. I don't remember for sure. That's also a 7:00 game, so we'll have, Yeah, we'll have that starting lineup anyway. Wrapping it up with Miami, 120 total for Miami. This, I think, in the aggregate is the lowest owned team on the slate. Nobody on this team right now is projected for more than 5% ownership. Hero getting 2%, Powell getting 3 or 4, Bam getting 3, Wiggins getting 2, Davion Mitchell getting 4. My highest owned guy here is Hero at 9%. He's only 8K. So, like, the upside you get from Tyler Hero is obviously high. I think you have to look back like one game to remember what a Tyler Hero game looks like. He only projects for like 36, 37 DraftKings points, which is pretty shitty for an 8K price tag. But again, like if he just gets hot, the offense can run through him and he can pour in a lot of points in a hurry. He's only played 3 games this year, 27% usage rate so far through those 3 games. So does have a ceiling, but not a particularly appealing matchup. 32, 32, and 29 minutes in his 3 games this season. The Clippers so far this season playing at the 3rd slowest pace, and they do rank 24th in adjusted defensive rating. So they've actually been just like the polar opposite of Miami. They don't really defend well, but they also play slow. So pace down spot in a big way for the Heat, but also has to be, also should see a little bit of increased efficiency. So if he is going to be 2% owned, he's somebody where I don't need him in a super high percentage of my lineups, but I can still be comfortably over the field getting to him, getting to his upside at low ownership. 6,900 for Norm Powell, 7,500 for Bam. I have 5% each. I have 5% Wiggins. These are all very, very similar plays to me, where because Tyler Hero is back and you've had a shorthanded Miami team for most of the season, none of the prices here look particularly good. But just like I was saying with the main pieces on the Hornets, you can still have a 1-game sample where Hero takes over or Powell takes over or Bam takes over or, like last game, Wiggins takes over. Maybe it was 2 games ago that Hero was good. I don't remember, but I know there was a 60-something fantasy point Wiggins game recently. I know Hero had a massive game recently. I don't think they were the same game. But regardless, it speaks to the point that like, on average, none of these guys are going to look great, but you're not just going to have game after game after game where like all of these guys have their average game. It's more likely that you get Tyler Hero having a big game and then Wiggins having a big game and then Bam having a big game, etc. And that over, 20 games, it averages out to none of these guys looking good at their respective salaries. So perfectly fine, like contrarian pieces, not one guy that I would like want to single out from Miami. Cleo Ware is up to 6,200, center only, not getting any ownership. Jaquez 5,900, not getting any ownership. So to recap, what I'm getting to the most right now, excluding Craig Porter because that will change. At the guard positions, I am getting to Yeoman, Tyson, Harden as the pay-up guy, getting a good amount of Donovan Mitchell as well. At the forward positions, really like Evan Mobley a lot. Brandon Miller at 6,400, I think is underpriced. I like getting to some Noah Clowney as long as his ownership doesn't come up too much. I do want to pay a lot of attention to that. I like Keyshawn George as a guard as well. At center, you do have value here. Keep an eye on the Washington starting lineup, but Bagley probably starting. If not, it should be Vucevic. Both of them look like good value options. Josh said, how much Yeager do you have? 45% in line with the field. I think he's probably the best point per dollar guard play at 4,400. Top plays for the field, highest owned guys right now. Yeoman, Bagley, Vucevic, Tyson, Harden, Suggs, Mobley. Nothing really surprising there. C. Thomas said, where is P-own? We don't have ownership projections up right now. These are mine that I'm referencing. But again, free for right now, fantasy projections on the site, link in the description below. Thanks again for checking out the show. I'll be back tomorrow, assuming we have a normal NBA slate. I haven't actually looked. If it's like a 2-gamer or something, I probably won't be. But assuming it's a real NBA slate, I'll be back again tomorrow. Going to do these shows more consistently. Thanks again for checking it out. See you tomorrow.